The golden sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Riverside Manor as Maria Johnson stood before the mirror in the bridal suite. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the simple white dress she had bought with her savings from working as a housemaid for 3 different wealthy families in the city. The dress was nothing fancy, but it made her feel beautiful on what should have been the happiest day of her life. Outside the door, she could hear the whispers and giggles of the wedding guests who had already arrived. Most of them were her employers and their friends, people who lived in mansions while she cleaned their floors and washed their dishes. They had come not out of love or support, but out of curiosity, and something that felt much worse than that. Maria had worked for these people for 5 years. She knew their secrets, their weaknesses, and their true nature behind their polite smiles. Patricia Adams, the woman who owned the largest house Maria cleaned, had insisted on hosting the wedding at this expensive venue. At first, Maria thought it was a kind gesture, but now she understood it was more like watching a circus show. Her sister Carmen knocked on the door and entered with Lisa, Maria's best friend since childhood. Both women looked worried as they approached her. "Maria, are you sure about this?" Carmen asked softly. "The way those people are talking out there, maybe we should have had the wedding somewhere else." Lisa nodded in agreement. "They keep asking questions about Danny. Some of them are saying really mean things. I heard Mrs. Adams tell someone that you're making the biggest mistake of your life." Maria turned from the mirror and faced her sister and best friend. These 2 women had supported her through everything, including her decision to marry a man the rest of the world saw as nothing more than a homeless drifter. They had met Danny several times over the past 6 months and had grown to love him almost as much as she did. "I know what they think," Maria said, her voice steady despite the hurt in her eyes. "They think I'm crazy for marrying someone who sleeps in the park and doesn't have a job or money, but they don't know Danny the way I do. They don't see how gentle he is, how smart he is, how he treats me like I'm the most important person in the world." Carmen took her sister's hands. "We know Danny is a good man. We've seen how happy he makes you. But these people, they're going to make today difficult for both of you." Through the window, Maria could see more guests arriving in their expensive cars. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses stepped out, already looking around with expressions of amusement and disbelief. She recognized most of them from the houses where she worked. There was Mr. Richard Stone, who owned 3 businesses and never failed to remind everyone about his wealth. There was Mrs. Helen Clark, who spent more money on her monthly hair appointments than Maria earned in 3 months. These people lived in a world where worth was measured by bank accounts and social status. Lisa helped Maria with her veil, a simple piece of white fabric that had belonged to their grandmother. "You look beautiful," she said, "and you know what? If they can't see how lucky Danny is to have you, then that's their problem, not yours." A soft knock on the door interrupted them. A young woman in a black uniform entered. She was another maid, working for the venue today. "Excuse me, Miss Johnson. The groom is ready and the ceremony can begin whenever you are." Maria nodded and took a deep breath. She thought about Danny, who was probably standing at the altar right now wearing the only suit he owned. It was borrowed from a charity organization and it didn't fit him perfectly, but he had looked so handsome when she saw him earlier that morning. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his usually scruffy face was clean-shaven. But most importantly, his eyes had held that same gentle love she had fallen for 6 months ago. The 3 women walked together toward the main hall where the ceremony would take place. As they got closer, Maria could hear the voices of the guests more clearly. The conversation stopped as she appeared, and she felt dozens of eyes examining her like she was some kind of strange creature in a zoo. She walked down the aisle between rows of chairs filled with people who saw her as entertainment rather than a bride celebrating love. Some of them had their phones out, probably planning to share photos and stories about the ridiculous wedding they had witnessed. Others whispered behind their hands, making no effort to hide their amusement. But then Maria saw Danny standing at the altar, and everything else faded away. He was looking at her with such pure love and admiration that it took her breath away. This man, who the world saw as worthless, looked at her like she was a queen. His smile was warm and genuine, so different from the fake smiles of the people sitting behind her. The ceremony began with a minister who seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. He kept glancing at the guests as if he was embarrassed to be part of this wedding. But Danny and Maria only had eyes for each other. When it came time for their vows, Danny spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried through the entire room. "Maria," he said, "you saved my life in ways you'll never understand. You saw something in me when everyone else saw nothing. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me was not misplaced." Maria felt tears running down her cheeks as she spoke her own vows. "Danny, you taught me that real love isn't about what someone has or where they come from. It's about who they are inside. I choose you today and every day for the rest of my life." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Danny kissed Maria gently while the guests clapped politely. But even their applause sounded hollow and forced, like they were going through the motions of celebrating something they found ridiculous. As the newly married couple walked back down the aisle together, Maria could feel the weight of judgment and mockery from every person in the room. But she held Danny's hand tightly and kept her head high. She had married the man she loved, and that was all that mattered to her in this moment. The reception hall was decorated with white flowers and golden ribbons, creating an elegant atmosphere that felt completely wrong for what was happening inside. Maria and Danny sat at the head table, trying to enjoy their wedding meal while conversations buzzed around them like angry wasps. Every few minutes, Maria would catch fragments of whispered comments that made her stomach turn. "I just don't understand what she's thinking," Mrs. Helen Clark said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "That girl could have found a nice man with a steady job. Instead, she picks up some vagrant from the street." Her companion, a thin woman with too much jewelry, nodded eagerly. "My maid told me he was actually sleeping in the park when she found him. Can you imagine? What kind of diseases might he have?" Danny's jaw tightened, but he continued eating his food without responding. Maria reached under the table and squeezed his hand, trying to give him strength. She had warned him that this might happen, but experiencing it was much worse than talking about it. Richard Stone stood up from his table and walked over to where some other businessmen were sitting. His voice carried across the room as he spoke. "You know, I've seen some gold diggers in my time, but this takes the cake. What's he going to dig for? Her minimum wage salary?" The men around him laughed loudly at his joke. "Maybe he thinks she'll inherit something from one of the families she works for," another man added, "though I can't imagine any of them leaving money to the help." Carmen, who was sitting next to Maria, started to stand up with anger flashing in her eyes, but Danny gently shook his head. "Let them talk," he said quietly. "Words can't hurt us unless we let them." But the words kept coming. A group of younger women, friends of Patricia Adams's daughter, had gathered near the bar and were making no effort to lower their voices. One of them, a blonde woman in an expensive red dress, was holding court like she was telling the most amusing story ever. "Heard she met him when she was taking out the garbage," the woman said. "He was probably going through the trash cans looking for food. How romantic is that?" Her friends giggled and sipped their champagne. "At least we know it's true love," another woman added sarcastically. "I mean, what else could it be? It's not like he has money or looks or a future." Lisa, who had been trying to stay calm for Maria's sake, finally reached her breaking point. She walked over to the group of women with fire in her eyes. "You know what?" she said loudly. "You people are disgusting. This is supposed to be a celebration of love, and you're treating it like some kind of comedy show." The blonde woman in red looked Lisa up and down with obvious disdain. "Oh, please. We're just being realistic. Your friend is making a huge mistake, and someone should tell her before it's too late." "Too late for what?" Lisa shot back. "Too late to marry someone who actually loves her instead of someone who just wants to use her. Too late to choose happiness over your shallow idea of success." Meanwhile, Patricia Adams had been working her way around the room, playing the role of concerned employer and friend. She approached Maria with a fake smile and a glass of champagne in her hand. "Maria, dear," she said in a voice that dripped with false sweetness, "I hope you know that I only want what's best for you. We've known each other for years and I've grown quite fond of you. That's why I have to ask, are you absolutely certain about this decision? Maria looked up at the woman who had never shown her genuine kindness in 5 years of employment. I'm very certain, Mrs. Adams. Danny is the best man I've ever known. Patricia sighed dramatically. But darling, love isn't enough to pay the bills. What are you going to live on? How will you survive? This man can't even take care of himself, let alone a wife. We'll figure it out together, Maria replied firmly. That's what married couples do. But you're so young and pretty, Patricia continued. You could find someone with a career, someone who could give you a real future. Why settle for this? Before Maria could respond, Richard Stone had moved closer to their conversation. The alcohol had made him bolder and crueler than usual. You know what I think? He announced loudly. I think we should call social services. This guy is probably mentally ill or on drugs. No normal person chooses to live on the streets when they could get help. The room fell silent for a moment, and Maria felt her face burning with embarrassment and anger. Danny had been sitting quietly through all of this, but she could see the muscles in his neck tightening. Maybe we should check his background, Stone continued, encouraged by the attention he was getting. Make sure he's not wanted for anything. I mean, what do we really know about him? He could be dangerous. Carmen stood up so quickly that her chair fell backward. That's enough, she shouted. You people are horrible. This is my sister's wedding day, and you're treating her husband like he's some kind of criminal. Well, we don't know that he's not, Stone replied with a smirk. All I'm saying is that any normal person would have questions about a man with no home, no job, and no past that anyone knows about. The tension in the room was becoming unbearable. Several guests had their phones out, recording the drama for their social media accounts. Others were whispering excitedly about the entertainment value of the whole situation. A few people looked uncomfortable with how cruel things had become, but none of them spoke up to defend Maria and Danny. Danny finally looked up from his plate and made eye contact with Richard Stone. For just a moment, there was something in Danny's eyes that seemed to surprise Stone, like he was looking at someone completely different than the homeless man he had been mocking. You're right, Danny said quietly. You don't know anything about me. The simple statement somehow carried more weight than all of Stone's loud accusations. There was something in Danny's voice, a calm authority that didn't match his appearance or circumstances. Several people stopped their conversations and turned to look at him more carefully. But before anyone could respond, Patricia Adams laughed loudly and broke the moment. Well, of course we don't know anything about you. How could we? You don't exactly have a resume or references, do you? The cruel laughter that followed her comment finally pushed Maria past her limit. She had endured enough mockery and judgment for one day. She was about to stand up and tell everyone exactly what she thought of them when she felt Danny's hand gently touch her arm. It's okay, he whispered to her. Let me handle this. 6 months earlier, Maria had been walking home from her late shift at the Clark mansion when she decided to take a shortcut through Riverside Park. The November air was cold, and she pulled her jacket tighter as she hurried along the familiar path. She had walked this route hundreds of times, but that night something made her stop. Under a large oak tree, barely visible in the dim light from a nearby street lamp, she saw a figure huddled against the trunk. At first, she thought it might be dangerous and considered walking around to avoid any trouble, but something about the way the person was sitting perfectly still and quiet made her curious instead of afraid. As she got closer, she could see it was a man, probably in his 30s, with dark hair that needed cutting and clothes that had seen better days. He wasn't bothering anyone or causing trouble. He was just sitting there staring up at the stars with an expression of deep thought on his face. Are you okay? Maria had asked, surprising herself with her boldness. The man looked at her with gentle brown eyes that seemed much older than his face. I'm fine, thank you, he replied. His voice was educated and polite, not what she had expected from someone sleeping in the park. It's really cold tonight, Maria said. Don't you have somewhere to go? This is where I belong right now, he answered simply, without any self-pity or anger in his voice. Maria should have kept walking. She should have minded her own business and gone home to her small apartment. Instead, she found herself sitting down on the bench near his tree. "I'm Maria," she said. "Danny," he replied, and they sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both looking up at the clear night sky. That first conversation had lasted over an hour. Danny was intelligent and thoughtful, able to discuss everything from astronomy to philosophy with a depth that amazed Maria. He never asked her for money or food, never made her feel uncomfortable or unsafe. When she finally had to leave, she found herself looking forward to seeing him again. The next night, she brought him a sandwich and a cup of hot coffee. He accepted the food gratefully, but insisted on sharing it with her. They talked about books they had read, places they wanted to travel, and dreams they had for the future. Danny never talked about his past or how he had ended up living in the park, and Maria never pushed him to explain. Week after week, their friendship grew stronger. Maria discovered that Danny was kind to everyone he met, from the other homeless people in the park to the children who played there during the day. He helped an elderly woman find her lost dog, gave his only blanket to a younger man who was shivering, and somehow always managed to make Maria laugh even after her worst days at work. "Why do you live out here?" Maria had finally asked one evening, in February after they had been meeting for 3 months. Danny was quiet for a long time before answering. "I lost everything that mattered to me," he said. "My career, my home, my faith in the world. I ended up here because it felt like the only honest place to be." "But you're so smart," Maria protested. "You could get a job, find an apartment. You don't have to live like this." "Maybe someday," Danny had replied. "But right now, this is where I need to be. The world out there, it's not what people think it is. There are things happening that most people can't even imagine." Maria didn't understand what he meant by that, but she could hear the pain in his voice. Something terrible had happened to him, something that had broken his trust in normal life. She wanted to help him heal, but she didn't know how. Their relationship changed, slowly from friendship to something deeper. Danny never asked for anything from her, but Maria found herself thinking about him constantly. He was the kindest, most genuine person she had ever met. When he looked at her, she felt like she was the most important person in the world. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Maria had told him one evening in April as they sat together watching the sunset. Danny turned to look at her with surprise and something that might have been fear. "Maria, you don't understand. I'm not the kind of man you should love. I don't have anything to offer you." "You offer me yourself," Maria replied. "That's all I want." "I'm not who you think I am," Danny said quietly. "There are things about me, about my past that you don't know. Things that might change how you feel about me." "Then tell me," Maria said simply. But Danny shook his head. "I can't, not yet. Maybe not ever. All I can tell you is that loving me might not be safe for you." Despite his warnings, their love continued to grow. Danny was protective and gentle, treating Maria with a respect she had never experienced from any other man. He listened to her, complaints about her demanding employers without judgment. He encouraged her dreams of maybe starting her own cleaning business someday. He made her feel valuable and important in a way that no one else ever had. When Maria proposed to Danny in June, he tried one more time to talk her out of it. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Really sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same." "I know," Maria replied. "I want my life to change. I want to spend it with you." Now, sitting at their wedding reception while cruel strangers mocked their love, Maria remembered those conversations. She remembered the warnings Danny had given her, the hints that there was more to his story than she knew. She had always assumed he was talking about some personal tragedy or failure that had led to his homelessness. But watching him now, seeing the way he sat perfectly calm while people attacked his character and questioned his motives, Maria began to wonder if she really knew her husband at all. There was something in his posture, something in the way he observed the room, that didn't match the broken man she thought she had married. When Richard Stone suggested calling social services and having Danny investigated, Maria saw her husband's hands tighten slightly on his napkin. When Patricia Adams questioned his mental state, she noticed Danny's eyes narrow almost imperceptibly. These were small reactions that no one else would notice, but Maria had spent 6 months learning to read Danny's subtle expressions. The man sitting next to her was not afraid of these people or their threats. He was not embarrassed by their mockery or hurt by their cruel words. If anything, he seemed to be waiting for something, like an actor preparing to deliver the most important lines of his life. "You don't know anything about me," Danny had said to Richard Stone, and now Maria realized that statement was more true than anyone in the room could possibly imagine. The transformation in Danny was so complete and sudden that Maria barely recognized her own husband. The man standing beside her bore little resemblance to the quiet, humble person she had married just hours earlier. His posture was straight and confident. His voice carried the authority of someone used to commanding respect, and his eyes held the intelligence that seemed to see right through every person in the room. "My name is Dr. Daniel Carter," he began, and the title hit the room like a physical blow. "For the past 15 years, I served as the Director of Advanced Propulsion Research at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I hold doctoral degrees in theoretical physics and aerospace engineering from MIT, and until 3 years ago, I was considered one of the leading experts in faster-than-light communication technology." The silence in the room was so complete that Maria could hear her own heartbeat. Richard Stone's mouth had fallen open, and Patricia Adams looked like she had been slapped. Every person who had spent the evening mocking the homeless man was now staring at someone who clearly outranked them in education, intelligence, and professional achievement. 3 years ago, Danny continued, his voice steady and calm, my research team at NASA achieved something that changed everything we thought we knew about Earth's place in the universe. We were working on experimental communication systems, designed to send messages faster than light speed. The project was classified at the highest levels, known only to a handful of people in government and military leadership. Maria felt like she was in a dream. The man she had met in the park, the gentle soul who had shared sandwiches with her and talked about books and stars, was apparently one of the most brilliant scientists in the country. Everything she thought she knew about her husband was crumbling and reforming in her mind. "Our breakthrough came on March 15th, 3 years ago," Danny said. "We successfully sent and received the first faster-than-light communication in human history. But we weren't just sending messages into empty space. We were listening too. And what we heard changed everything." He paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with several of the people who had been insulting him just minutes earlier. The authority in his gaze made them look away uncomfortably. "We intercepted communications from an approaching fleet of ships," Danny continued. "Ships that were not built by any nation on Earth. The signals were coming from vessels traveling toward our solar system at speeds that should have been impossible. Within 48 hours, we had decoded enough of their transmissions to understand their purpose." Helen Clark found her voice first, though it came out as barely a whisper. "You're saying aliens?" "I'm saying that Earth has been under observation by an organization called the Galactic Council for the past 50 years, Danny replied matter-of-factly. "This council is made up of representatives from over 200 intelligent species, spread across our galaxy. Every planet that develops space travel and advanced technology is eventually evaluated for potential membership." The wedding guests were staring at Danny like he had lost his mind, but there was something in his tone and demeanor that made his incredible claims sound believable. This was not the rambling of a crazy person. This was the calm, measured explanation of a scientist presenting research findings. "The communications we intercepted were evaluation reports," Danny continued. "For the past 5 decades, alien observers have been studying human civilization, documenting our progress, our conflicts, our achievements, and our failures. Based on their observations, they were preparing to make a recommendation to the Galactic's Council about whether humanity should be invited to join galactic civilization, or whether we should be left to develop on our own for another few centuries." Maria found her voice, though it sounded strange and far away. "Danny, what are you saying? This sounds like science fiction." Danny turned to her with the same gentle smile she had fallen in love with, but now it carried depth she was only beginning to understand. "I know how it sounds, Maria. 3 years ago I would have thought the same thing. But I've seen the evidence. I've heard their communications. I've watched their ships moving through space beyond our solar system." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like nothing Maria had ever seen before. It was about the size of a smartphone but appeared to be made of some kind of metal that shifted colors in the light. Strange symbols glowed softly on its surface. "This is one of the communication devices we built using technology reverse-engineered from their transmissions," Danny said, holding the device up for everyone to see. "It's capable of sending messages across interstellar distances instantly. No other nation on Earth has technology even close to this advanced." Richard Stone, who had been speechless since Danny's revelation began, finally managed to speak. "If this is true, if you really worked for NASA and discovered aliens, then why are you living in a park? Why did the government discredit you?" Danny's expression grew darker, and Maria could see the pain that had been hidden behind his gentle demeanor for the past 6 months. "Because the evaluation reports we intercepted contained some disturbing conclusions about humanity. The alien. Observers had documented every war, every act of cruelty, every example of greed and hatred in our recent history. Their preliminary recommendation was that humans were too violent and primitive to be trusted with advanced technology or membership in galactic civilization." The room was so quiet that Maria could hear the air conditioning humming in the ceiling. Every person present was hanging on Danny's words, trying to process the implications of what he was telling them. "When I brought these findings to my superiors," Danny continued, "they made a decision that I couldn't live with. Instead of working to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars, they chose to bury the evidence completely. They classified everything beyond top secret, ordered all research stopped, and began a campaign to discredit anyone who had knowledge of the alien contact. They destroyed your career," Maria said, understanding beginning to dawn on her face. "They did more than that," Danny replied. "They painted me as a delusional scientist who had suffered a mental breakdown. They leaked false stories about my research, claiming I had fabricated evidence and wasted government money on impossible projects. Within 6 months, I went from being a respected researcher to being seen as a joke in the scientific community." Patricia Adams, who had been silent since Danny began his revelation, finally spoke up. "But why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you prove them wrong?" "Because I realized something important," Danny said. "The aliens weren't wrong about humanity. Look at this room tonight. Look at how you all treated someone you thought was beneath you. The cruelty, the mockery, the complete lack of compassion. You proved their point better than any of their surveillance reports ever could." The accusation hit the wedding guests like a physical blow. Several people looked ashamed, finally understanding that their behavior had been exactly the kind of thing that made aliens question humanity's worthiness. "So I made a choice," Danny continued. "I took the research underground. I destroyed my old life completely and started over, living among the people that society had forgotten. Because I realized that if humanity was going to prove itself worthy of the stars, it wouldn't be through the actions of the wealthy and powerful. It would be through the kindness and compassion of ordinary people." He looked at Maria with such love and admiration that it took her breath away. "People like my wife, who saw a stranger in need and offered help without expecting anything in return. People who judge others by their character instead of their bank accounts. People who understand that love is more powerful than money or status or fear." Danny held the strange device higher, and its surface began to glow more brightly, casting an eerie light across the faces of the stunned wedding guests. The symbols on its surface were moving now, shifting and changing in patterns that seemed almost alive. Several people in the back of the room started to stand up as if they were thinking about leaving, but something about the moment kept them frozen in place. "The Galactic Council operates on a system that most humans would find difficult to understand," Danny continued, his voice taking on the tone of a teacher explaining a complex concept to students. "Every species that achieves advanced technology is watched and evaluated for hundreds of years before contact is made. The observers look for specific qualities that determine whether a species is ready to join galactic civilization." Maria found herself staring at her husband as if seeing him for the first time. The man she had married was not just intelligent and kind. He was apparently one of the most important people on Earth, Someone who held knowledge that could change the course of human history. What kind of qualities? Asked Carmen, who had been listening with wide eyes since Danny's revelation began. Intelligence is a given, Danny replied. Any species that develops space travel has already proven their intellectual capabilities. What the Council looks for are qualities that are much harder to measure. Compassion for their own kind and for other species. The ability to work together instead of constantly fighting. Wisdom in how they use their technology. And most importantly, the capacity for what they call emotional evolution. Richard Stone, who had been looking increasingly uncomfortable as Danny spoke, tried to regain some of his earlier confidence. This is insane, even if aliens exist. Even if they're watching us, what makes you think they care about our emotions? Wouldn't they be more interested in our technology or our resources? Danny turned to look at Stone with an expression that was almost pitying. That's exactly the kind of thinking that convinced the observers that humanity might not be ready. You assume that more advanced beings would be motivated by the same greed and selfishness that drives human behavior. But species that survive long enough to develop interstellar travel have learned something that we're still struggling with. Which is what? Patricia Adams asked, though she seemed afraid to hear the answer. That cooperation is more powerful than competition, Danny replied. That love is more valuable than fear. That a civilization's true strength comes from how it treats its weakest members, not from how much wealth its strongest members can accumulate. He gestured around the room, taking in all the expensive decorations and well-dressed guests. The alien observers have been watching our planet for 50 years. They've seen our wars, our environmental destruction, our inequality. They've watched the wealthy get richer while the poor get poorer. They've documented every act of cruelty and selfishness that proves we're still a primitive species. Helen Clark looked defensive. But we've also made incredible advances. We've cured diseases. We've created amazing technology. We've built a global civilization. Yes, Danny agreed. And those advances are exactly why we're being evaluated now instead of being dismissed completely. The Galactic Council recognizes that humans have potential. But potential isn't enough. They need proof that we can evolve beyond our current limitations. The device in Danny's hand was now pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Several guests noticed that their own phones were behaving strangely, with screens flickering and displays showing symbols they didn't recognize. For the past 3 years, Danny continued, I've been working on a project that could change everything. Using the technology I salvaged from my NASA research, combined with new discoveries I've made while living among Earth's forgotten people, I've been developing something that no other species in the galaxy has ever achieved. What kind of something? Maria asked, though part of her was afraid to know the answer. Danny smiled at his wife with such warmth that it made her heart skip. A technology that harnesses human emotion as an energy source. Not negative emotions like anger or fear, which are destructive and unsustainable, but positive emotions like love, compassion, and hope. The statement was so unexpected that several people laughed nervously, as if Danny had just told a joke they didn't understand. But the seriousness in his expression made it clear that he wasn't joking at all. Every species that the Galactic Council has evaluated has achieved advancement through logic, efficiency, and the manipulation of physical forces, Danny explained. They've mastered their environments through science and technology, just like we have, but none of them have ever learned to harness the power of positive emotion. Lisa, who had been quiet since Danny's revelation began, found her voice. How is that even possible? How do you turn love into energy? The same way you turn any force into energy, Danny replied. By understanding its fundamental properties and learning to focus and direct it. Human emotions create measurable electrical and chemical changes in our bodies and brains. Those changes can be amplified, concentrated, and converted into usable power. He held up the device again, and this time everyone in the room could see that it was responding to something in this environment around them. The glow was stronger now, and the symbols were moving faster. This device is powered entirely by the emotional energy in this room, Danny said. Right now, it's drawing power from Maria's love for me, from Carmen and Lisa's loyalty to their friend, from the curiosity that most of you are feeling despite your skepticism. Even the anger and confusion some of you are experiencing is contributing to its function. Richard Stone took a step backward, as if the device might be dangerous. That's impossible. You can't power a machine with feelings. 3 years ago I would have agreed with you, Danny replied. But I've learned that human understanding of physics is still very limited. There are forms of energy that we haven't discovered yet, forces that operate on quantum levels we can barely detect with our current instruments. The device was now glowing so brightly that it was difficult to look at directly. The symbols on its surface had become a flowing stream of light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the collective heartbeat of everyone in the room. For 6 months, Danny said, looking directly at Maria, you've been helping me perfect this technology without even knowing it. Every act of kindness you showed me, every moment of genuine love we shared, every time you chose compassion over judgment, you were contributing to the most important scientific breakthrough in human history. Maria felt tears streaming down her face as she began to understand the true significance of their relationship. You married me for science? No, Danny said firmly, reaching out to take her hand. I married you because I love you more than life itself. But our love, the love that brought us together and made us stronger, that love is going to save our entire species. The device in his other hand was now producing a soft musical tone that seemed to resonate with something deep inside every person in the room. Even the most skeptical guests were staring at it with wonder and growing belief. The alien observers have been monitoring Earth's electromagnetic spectrum for signs of emotional evolution, Danny explained. They've been waiting for proof that humanity has learned to harness positive emotion as a constructive force. This device, powered by the love between Maria and me, is about to send that proof directly to the Galactic Council. The cruelty in the room had reached a breaking point that Maria could no longer endure. Richard Stone was now openly suggesting that Danny might be a criminal or mentally ill, while Patricia Adams nodded in agreement and added her own commentary about the dangers of Maria's poor judgment. Other guests were pulling out their phones to record what they clearly saw as entertainment, and the whispered insults had become loud enough for everyone to hear. I've had enough of this, Maria said, standing up from her chair so suddenly that it nearly fell over. Her voice carried across the room, cutting through the conversations and laughter. You people are absolutely disgusting. The hall fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Maria's face was flushed with anger, and her hands were shaking as she looked around at the crowd of well-dressed, wealthy people who had spent her wedding day treating her and her husband like a circus act. You think you're so much better than us, Maria continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. You think your money and your big houses and your fancy clothes make you important. But you know what? You're the most pathetic people I've ever met. Patricia Adams looked shocked that her employee was speaking to her this way. Maria, dear, please calm down. We're only trying to help you see reason. Help me? Maria laughed bitterly. You're not trying to help me. You're enjoying that. You invited all these people here so you could watch them make fun of my husband and me. You think our love is some kind of joke. Well, isn't it? Richard Stone interrupted with a smirk. Come on, be honest. A maid marrying a homeless man? It's like something out of a bad movie. Maria turned to face him directly, and the fury in her eyes made him take a step backward. You want to know what's like a bad movie? A grown man who thinks his bank account makes him a better person. A man who gets his entertainment from mocking other people's happiness. I'm just being realistic, Stone protested. Someone needs to tell you the truth about this situation. The truth? Maria's voice rose even higher. The truth is that my husband is 10 times the man you'll ever be. He's kind and gentle and intelligent. He treats me with more respect in one day than you've probably shown your wife in your entire marriage. Helen Clark, who had been one of the loudest critics all evening, decided to join the argument. But Maria, you have to think practically. What kind of future can you have with someone who can't even support himself? What kind of future do you have? Maria shot back. You spend your days gossiping about other people and shopping for things you don't need. You've never worked a day in your life, but you think that makes you superior to someone who's struggling? The room was completely silent now except for Maria's voice. Even the servers had stopped what they were doing to listen to the confrontation. Danny remained seated, watching his wife defend their love with a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. "You want to know about Danny?" Maria continued, now addressing the entire room. "I'll tell you about him. He's the most honest person I've ever met. He's never lied to me or tried to impress me with things he doesn't have. When I'm with him, I feel like I matter, like I'm worth something." "But Maria," Patricia Adams tried to interrupt. "No," Maria shouted. "I'm not finished. You people think love is about finding someone who can buy you expensive things or give you social status. But real love is about finding someone who sees the best in you, someone who makes you want to be a better person. Danny does that for me every single day." Carmen and Lisa were watching their friend with admiration and concern. They had never seen Maria this angry before, but they understood her frustration. The treatment she and Danny had received today was beyond cruel. "You think I'm stupid for marrying him," Maria went on. "You think I should have found some rich man who would take care of me. But I don't want to be taken care of like a pet. I want to be loved like an equal. Danny is the only man who's ever loved me for who I am, not for what I can do for him." Richard Stone was getting frustrated with being lectured by someone he considered beneath him. "Look, we get it. You think you're in love. But love doesn't pay the rent. Love doesn't put food on the table. What are you going to do when reality hits?" "Reality?" Maria laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about reality? The reality is that I'd rather be poor with Danny than rich with any of you. At least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror every morning without feeling ashamed." The insults and attacks had become so heated that several guests were starting to look uncomfortable. A few people near the back of the room were quietly gathering their things, apparently deciding they had seen enough drama for one evening. But Maria wasn't done. 6 months of watching people judge her relationship, 5 years of being treated like she was invisible by these same people who now felt entitled to criticize her life choices, and a lifetime of being told she wasn't good enough had all combined into this moment of pure rage. "You know what the saddest part is?" she said, her voice now steady and cold. "You're all so empty inside that the only way you can feel good about yourselves is by tearing other people down. You have everything money can buy, but you don't have what Danny and I have. You don't have real love." "Oh, please," Helen Clark said dismissively. "Spare us the fairy tale romance. In 6 months, when you're living in that park with him, you'll realize how naive you were." "And in 6 months," Maria replied, "you'll still be the same bitter, lonely people you are today, except you'll be a little older and a little more desperate to find meaning in your meaningless lives." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria had crossed a line that servants and employees were never supposed to cross. She had told wealthy people exactly what she thought of them, and the shock on their faces was almost worth everything she had endured. But just as Maria was preparing to grab Danny's hand and storm out of the reception, she felt his gentle touch on her arm. She looked down at her husband, expecting to see embarrassment or anger on his face. Instead, she saw something completely unexpected. Danny was smiling. Not the sad, resigned smile she had grown used to seeing when people treated him badly, but a confident, almost amused expression that she had never seen before. "Thank you, Maria," he said quietly, his voice carrying a strange authority that seemed to fill the entire room. "I love you for defending us. But I think it's time these people learned who they're really talking about." Danny stood up slowly, and something about the way he moved made everyone in the room focus their attention on him. When he spoke again, his voice was completely different from the quiet, humble tone he had used throughout their entire relationship. "Ladies and gentlemen," Danny said, and suddenly he sounded like someone accustomed to addressing large groups of important people. "Thank you all for coming to our wedding. Before you leave, I think there are a few things you should know about who I really am." The device in Danny's hand had become so bright that everyone in the room had to shield their eyes. The musical tone it was producing grew louder and more complex, creating harmonies that seemed to resonate not just in their ears but in their hearts and minds. Several guests were now crying without understanding why, overwhelmed by emotions they couldn't name or explain. "What you're witnessing," Danny said, his voice somehow carrying clearly over the device's music, "is the first successful demonstration of love-based energy conversion. This technology represents something that no other species in the galaxy has ever achieved, because no other species has developed the emotional complexity that humans possess." Maria was staring at the device with a mixture of wonder and fear. The light it was producing seemed to be responding to her own heartbeat, growing brighter every time she looked at Danny and felt the surge of love that had defined their relationship from the beginning. "For 3 years I've been perfecting this technology in secret," Danny continued. "I've tested it with dozens of volunteers from among the homeless community, people who understood what it meant to rely on kindness and compassion for survival. But it wasn't until I met Maria that I understood the true power source this device required." He turned to face his wife directly, and the love in his eyes was so intense that several people in the room actually gasped. The device responded immediately, its glow becoming almost blindingly bright. "True love," Danny said simply. "Not the shallow attraction or temporary infatuation that most people mistake for love, but the deep, selfless, enduring connection between two people who choose each other every day. That kind of love generates more pure energy than any other force in the universe." Richard Stone, who had been growing more agitated as Danny's explanation continued, finally exploded. "This is insane. You can't seriously expect us to believe that you've invented some kind of love-powered machine that's going to impress aliens." "I don't expect you to believe anything," Danny replied calmly. "In approximately 30 seconds, you're going to see proof that will make belief irrelevant." As if responding to his words, the device's musical tone changed to a single pure note that seemed to vibrate through the building's structure. Every electronic device in the room, from cell phones to the sound system to the security cameras, began displaying the same flowing symbols that covered Danny's device. "What's happening?" Patricia Adams asked, her voice tight with fear. "The device is establishing a direct communication link with the Galactic Council," Danny explained. "For the past 3 years, alien observers stationed beyond our solar system have been waiting for this signal. It's the proof they need that humanity has achieved emotional evolution." The single note from the device suddenly expanded into a complex symphony that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. The symbols on every screen in the room were now moving in perfect synchronization, creating patterns that were beautiful, beyond description even though no one could understand their meaning. "The signal is broadcasting on frequencies that human technology can barely detect," Danny said. "But it's carrying more than just data. It's carrying the actual emotional energy that powers the device. Every alien observer within 1,000 light-years can feel the love between Maria and me as clearly as if they were standing in this room." Carmen, who had been watching everything with growing amazement, suddenly pointed toward the windows. "Look outside." Everyone turned to see lights moving across the night sky, lights that were definitely not airplanes or helicopters. They moved, in perfect formation, changing direction instantly without any regard for the laws of physics as humans understood them. More lights appeared, and then more, until the entire sky was filled with craft that could only have come from somewhere, beyond Earth. "They've been waiting just outside our solar system," Danny explained. "The Galactic Council observers who have been monitoring our progress for 50 years. They're responding to the signal, confirming that they've received our demonstration of emotional evolution." Several guests were now pressed against the windows, staring up at the impossible sight of alien spacecraft performing maneuvers that human engineering could never duplicate. The reality of Danny's claims was undeniable when faced with evidence, floating in the sky above them. "The signal isn't just proving that we can harness emotional energy," Danny continued. "It's demonstrating something even more important. It's showing that humans can choose love over fear, even in the face of the unknown." He gestured around the room, taking in all the people who had spent the evening mocking him and Maria. "Every person in this room has just witnessed first contact with an alien civilization. Your natural response should be terror or panic. But instead, most of you are feeling wonder and curiosity. That's proof of emotional evolution." Maria was watching her husband with new understanding. "This whole wedding, everything that happened, tonight you planned it all, didn't you?" Danny nodded, though his expression was apologetic. I needed a gathering of people who represented humanity's worst qualities, alongside people who represented our best. The alien observers needed to see the contrast, to understand that humans are capable of both cruelty and kindness. So we were a test? Richard Stone demanded angrily. You were a demonstration, Danny corrected. Your behavior tonight, the way you treated someone you thought was beneath you, that showed the aliens why they had concerns about humanity. But Maria's response, the way she defended our love against all your attacks, that showed them why humanity deserves a place among the stars. The device was now producing light so intense that it seemed to fill the entire room. But instead of being blinding or uncomfortable, the light felt warm and welcoming, like being embraced by pure love itself. Several guests were openly weeping, overwhelmed by emotions they had never experienced before. The energy signature we're broadcasting is unlike anything the Galactic Council has ever encountered, Danny explained. Other species achieve advancement through logic and efficiency. Humans are the first species to achieve it through love. That makes us incredibly valuable to galactic civilization. Helen Clark, who had been quiet since the alien ships appeared, finally found her voice. What happens now? Do they take us away? Do they invade Earth? Neither, Danny replied with a smile. They welcome us. The Galactic Council has been waiting for a species like humanity for thousands of years. A species that can harness positive emotion as a constructive force. We're not going to be conquered or rescued. We're going to be invited to join something magnificent. The musical note from the device suddenly changed again, becoming a harmony of voices that somehow everyone in the room could understand despite not recognizing the language. The message was simple and overwhelming. Welcome to the galaxy, children of Earth. Your journey among the stars begins now. Outside the windows, the alien craft had arranged themselves in a perfect pattern that spelled out words in every human language simultaneously. The message was visible from every point on Earth's surface, announcing to all humanity that they were no longer alone in the universe. 3 years ago, I lost everything I thought mattered, Danny said, his voice filled with emotion as he looked at Maria. My career, my reputation, my old life. But losing those things led me to find something infinitely more valuable. I found love, and that love is going to transform our entire species. The device in his hand pulsed one final time and then went dark, its mission complete. But the change it had initiated would echo through human civilization for generations to come. 6 months later, Maria Carter stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth contact station, watching as massive alien vessels moved gracefully through Earth's orbit alongside human spacecraft that had been upgraded with Galactic Council technology. The sight still took her breath away, even though she had been living with the reality of humanity's new place in the universe for half a year. The wedding reception that had changed everything felt like a lifetime ago, though Maria could still remember every detail with perfect clarity. The moment when Danny had revealed his true identity, the demonstration of love-powered technology, and the arrival of alien observers had become the most documented event in human history. But for Maria, it would always be the night she learned that love really could change the world. Danny approached from behind and wrapped his arms around her, just as he had done countless times during their months together in the park. The difference now was that instead of borrowed clothes and uncertain futures, they wore the distinctive blue uniforms of Earth's first Galactic Council representatives. How are the integration meetings going? Maria asked, leaning back against her husband's chest. Better than anyone expected, Danny replied. The Council representatives are amazed by how quickly humans are adapting to galactic civilization. Most species take decades to adjust to new technologies and concepts. Humans are doing it in months. Through the station's massive windows, they could see one of the most remarkable sights in human history. A Galactic Council teaching vessel was docked alongside a converted human space station, while Earth's brightest scientists and engineers worked side by side with alien experts to share knowledge and technology. Carmen called this morning, Maria said. She's been accepted into the xenobiology program at the new International Space University. Lisa got her appointment to the Cultural Exchange Commission. It's like everyone we know is finding their place in this new world. Danny smiled and kissed the top of her head. That's how it's supposed to work. The Council doesn't just accept new species into galactic civilization. They help them find their unique contribution to the greater community. And what's humanity's contribution? Maria asked, though she already knew the answer. Love, Danny said simply. Emotional energy harnessing. The ability to transform positive feelings into tangible power. The Council has species that are incredibly logical. Species that are master engineers. Species that have conquered death and disease. But we're the first species they've encountered that can literally fuel civilization with compassion. The technology that had begun with Danny's demonstration at their wedding reception was now revolutionizing both Earth and galactic society. Love-powered generators were replacing fossil fuels and nuclear reactors across the planet. Starships equipped with emotion drive engines could travel between galaxies in days instead of centuries. Medical devices powered by healing intention were curing diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real, Maria admitted. 6 months ago, I was cleaning houses and dating a homeless man. Now I'm married to the most important scientist in human history, and we're representatives to an alien council. You were always the most important person in my world, Danny said softly. The only thing that changed is that now everyone else knows it too. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime indicating an incoming communication. A holographic display materialized in front of them, showing the familiar face of Ambassador Zephi, the primary Galactic Council liaison assigned to Earth. Daniel and Maria Carter, the ambassador said in the perfectly translated English that still amazed Maria every time she heard it. I hope I am not interrupting a private moment. Not at all, Ambassador, Danny replied. What can we do for you? The Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's proposal for the Emotional Energy Research Institute, Zephi announced. Your species' offer to share love-based technology with all Council members has been unanimously approved. Maria felt Danny's arms tighten around her in excitement. The Institute had been his dream project, a research facility where humans would work with alien scientists to explore the full potential of emotion-powered technology. There is more, the ambassador continued. The Council has also approved your request to establish contact protocols with pre-civilization species. Humanity will lead the galaxy's first emotion-based first contact program. This was even bigger news than the Research Institute. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council had maintained strict non-interference policies with developing civilizations, waiting for species to achieve space travel before making contact. But humanity's emotional evolution technology offered new possibilities for helping younger species develop peacefully. We're honored by the Council's trust, Danny said formally, though Maria could hear the excitement in his voice. The honor is ours, Zephi replied. In 300 years of Council operations, no species has brought such revolutionary changes to galactic civilization. Your people's capacity for emotional growth continues to astonish our researchers. After the communication ended, Maria and Danny stood in comfortable silence, watching the ballet of human and alien ships moving through space around them. The future that had seemed impossible just months ago was now their daily reality. Do you ever miss it? Maria asked suddenly. The simple life we had before all this, just the two of us in the park talking about books and watching the stars? Danny turned her around to face him, and the love in his eyes was exactly the same as it had been on that first night when she had found him under the oak tree. We still watch the stars, he said. We just do it from a better vantage point now. As if summoned by his words, the stars around them began to shimmer and dance as more alien vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel. Each ship represented another species, another civilization that was part of the vast community that humanity had now joined. Besides, Danny added with the gentle smile that had made Maria fall in love with him, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, we're still just two people who chose to love each other. That hasn't changed, and it never will. Far below them, Earth continued its rotation, carrying 7 billion humans who were learning to see themselves not as isolated beings on a single planet, but as valued members of a galactic family. Children were growing up knowing that love was literally a superpower. Scientists were discovering that cooperation was more productive than competition. Leaders were learning that compassion was more effective than force. The transformation that had begun with a maid's kindness to a homeless man had rippled outward to change an entire species. Humanity had passed its test not through technology or military might, but through the simple recognition that love was the most powerful force in the universe. And in the observation deck of the Earth Contact Station, Maria and Danny Carter held each other close and watched their love continue to light up the stars, knowing that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The wedding guests who had laughed at their unlikely union would never laugh again, because they had witnessed the moment when two human hearts proved that love really could conquer not just personal obstacles, but the vast loneliness of space itself. The cosmos was no longer a cold, empty place where humanity struggled alone. It was home, filled with friends they had yet to meet, and wonders they had yet to discover. And it all began with a simple truth that Maria had known from the beginning. When you love someone completely, anything becomes possible.